Vanessa Vershaw is an elite high-performance workplace psychologist and a trusted advisor to executives and key decision makers of ASX 20 and Fortune 100 companies globally. A champion for social justice and gender equality, Vanessa won the Momentum Trailblazer of the Year award for her work empowering women to reach for the stars and create the life and careers they dream about, which sounds fantastic. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
And this led her to representing APAC and speaking at the 2025 World Woman Foundation in Davos in Switzerland. Amazing, Vanessa.
Yeah, very much a surreal experience. It was wonderful to be invited to represent Australia, and I was the only Australian speaking on any panel at Davos this year. So there
Wow.
was no pressure, and absolutely terrifying. But look, the attendees at Davos were absolutely fabulous, warm and welcoming, men and women alike, and it was just such a supportive environment. It was truly amazing. I can't even describe it.
Oh, so good. And congratulations on your book, which launches tomorrow, the 1st of May, at the time that we're recording, which is called The Sisterhood Paradox. So I'm so excited to chat to you today. And I should say, welcome to Leading You.
Oh, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I'm absolutely thrilled to have the opportunity to talk about this topic and talk with you, Julie, as well. So thanks so much for honouring the topic and inviting me to have a conversation with you. I really appreciate it.
Not a problem. It's such an important topic, so I'm really keen to get into this. So before we do dive into the book, The Sisterhood Paradox, was there a moment or experience that made you realise that this conversation was really desperately needed to have?
I almost feel like you've got a crystal ball, Julie, and you were looking into my mind because you haven't read the book yet. So the fact that you asked that question is a little bit spooky in a good way. You must have some powers that your audience doesn't know about, or maybe they do. But I did actually. So last year, when the World Economic Forum put out their global report on gender equality, I was reading through the numbers and I was talking to a couple of executives around, particularly Ashley McGrath, CEO for Gender Equity. She's the CEO of that organisation. And not only have we only increased gender equality globally by 1%, okay, just let me just add 1% over the last decade. In Australia, we've actually fossilised. The rate of progress has fossilised, and we've even gone backwards in some instances.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, I'm reading this data, and I'm reading through all the reasons why and all the stuff that we know about. And I'm not going to bore your audience because we've all heard about it before. In fact, many Australians are sick of hearing about it, right? And that's the data that's showing us. And I'm looking, and nowhere in there is there a mention of one phenomenon that occurs in workplaces at such a high rate that we are still not talking about again. And it is women mistreating, taking down, actively blocking the progress of other women at work. Hello. In fact, and this isn't just me talking, this isn't me just kind of giving you my instincts, even though I've got loads of anecdotal evidence being in high performance. But 46 to 52% of women report being bullied, over half by another woman. And no one is talking about it. And I'm reading this again. Look, I had this moment about 10 years ago, I'll be honest with you, Julie, when I wrote another book called Bitch Fight.
I love that title.
Oh, thank you. I wasn't allowed. I was being very PC with this one. And I started the conversation back then for different reasons because I was seeing just a frequency of it in my work behind closed doors. And I'd also had some personal experiences with it. And I knew the impact of it and how bad it is. But when I saw that, I thought, you know what? it is time to resurface, revitalise this conversation, see how it's evolved and changed, if it has at all. And I wasn't sure. I've been hearing things, but, I'm a scientist at heart. So what's the evidence to suggest that there's even been a shift? And what I found will blow your mind. So not only has it increased, but the tactics have become more sophisticated, and they differ from those used by men. And we have the advent of, obviously, the cyber world and technology, which is exacerbating it even further and starting even younger.
My gosh, that is so scary. That's actually given me goosebumps. In that, what we're seeing in the schoolyard, like in schools, is now transitioning into the workplace. That's horrifying.
It's absolutely horrifying. And you asked me what was the catalyst for me kind of launching this book. One was that data. The second piece, quite honestly, is that Charlotte O'Brien from Santa Sabina in New South Wales, who took her own life after being bullied by the girls. And her parents reporting it to the teachers who investigated the matter. The girls denied it, and they are still at the school. And unfortunately, with Australia leading the way in terms of the highest rates of bullying in schools globally, followed by New Zealand, and some of the highest rates of workplace violence and harassment in the world, we need to be talking about this, because if this is the one lever we have yet to interrogate or evaluate or investigate that could make a difference to women, advancing gender equality for women and creating workplaces where every woman can thrive, and potentially reducing the rate of bullying also early on, then I think we probably need to be understanding it better and looking into it. And so this book is surfacing that conversation with so much evidence and research and data. And I want to make that clear. I am a scientist practitioner. It's not me saying, hey, I'm feeling like, no. The data and the evidence substantiating the frequency and the severity of what I'm talking about. You be the judge. For all of your listeners, you be the judge. You read it and you figure out your stance on this. What I'm doing is I'm putting a proposition forward to say, hey, maybe we need to look into this and understand it a little better, because we're just putting it under the carpet. We're turning a blind eye and we're saying either it's not happening, some people say, usually people who haven't experienced it, by the way, or it is happening, but it's not that bad. Actually, it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can see it. It's like you're very passionate about this and it really means something to you. And I think this should really mean something to everyone. Those rates of bullying, that we're leading the way for the wrong things. Like, we don't want to be leading the way in Australia for this. So thank you for sharing that. So you describe the sisterhood paradox as the hidden force that is holding women back. And I think that's such a great, a label to attach to that. So why do you believe female aggression towards other women is still so common and probably increased, as you say, even after decades of pushing for gender equality? And, this is what we want and this is what we fight for, but this is not what we're doing.
It's interesting. Like, I could answer it with the theories, I could answer it with actually what I believe to be happening. So I'll start with what I believe, and then maybe we can look into some of the myths. I want to say that I don't believe that any woman is inherently meaner than a man. We're not inherently meaner as a gender. I don't believe that to be true. But what I do believe is, I'll talk about the working world. When you have an organisational life or workplaces where we don't have enough representation at the top, or women in decision-making roles or transformation roles, or in roles that actually move, are power roles, sit at the table, what you do is you set up organisational contexts that are scarcity environments. And as human animals, when we have scarcity environments, you're literally setting up environments where it's dog eat dog, where women are going to be more likely to be pitted against each other to compete for the one seat at the table that may exist. And so it's going to draw out those types of behaviours naturally. Okay? Now, I think what's really interesting with the myths around this, and this goes beyond the mean girl tropes or anything like that. I'm talking about the type of aggression, because not all forms are created differently, where it's really deleterious. So the book that I've written goes through the different levels of aggression, okay, because they're not all created equal. Somebody calling you a name, yeah, all right, yeah, that happens from anybody. But actually moving to bullying with the intent to take down, harm, or destroy, that's a very different ball game. And I think part of the issue is that people just lump them all into one and say, well, that's a woman being bitchy, or that's just women just fight, or you're emotional, all of this bullshit. And it's not actually the case. You've got to actually be able to differentiate between them, but understand that contextually in workplaces, we are being set up to compete, okay? So does that mean that women don't have a choice? And this is the interesting one. Darwinian theory and evolutionary theory will suggest to you, and I had an opportunity to speak to Dr. Jane Goodall. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Yeah.
Lady at Taronga Zoo. And she said, well, being a bitch is entrenched in our DNA. Just look at the animal kingdom. But and I get it. I get that theory. But here's the thing. As human beings, aren't we supposed to be have critical thinking? Aren't we supposed to be more in charge of our will? I would like to think that we've elevated from the chimp, okay? And that we shouldn't be designated to being, the chimp or the dog,
That's so true.
Intelligence, So that's kind of where I come from. Yes, we may be pit against each other, but we do have a choice in how we choose to behave. And that's the benefit of being intelligent Homo sapiens.
Yeah.
So I don't believe we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. I believe that we have a choice. What is happening though, and this is really interesting, when you speak to a lot of women, sometimes they're not even aware of how they're feeling aggressive towards other women or why. It's such an unconscious response because of the fact that the workplace has become almost like a jungle where we have to compete to survive. And so they're getting along, they're doing what they're doing. And some women, really good women that I've interviewed for this book, say, oh my goodness, maybe that was, a bully. And I'll say, well, no, because bullying is different. But no doubt you weren't really your best self in that moment.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think we need to be able to differentiate between mean girls, incivility, which is what it's called, which is lower level tactics.
Yep.
And bullying, which is the intent to actually harm. And that is happening as well.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, just had to cough. Now, the worst leader I ever worked under in 21 years in corporate was a woman. She was a bully, just as you're describing, and it was intentional because she was feeling confronted, sort of, unconfident, if you like. So, but it shook my confidence at the time and many around me. I can only speak for myself. But why do you think that female leaders, it just seems to cut deeper than male leaders? Like, I work with some really shitty men as well. But it's different. I don't know. It just seems to be different.
But it is, and you've really hit the nail on the head. So there's so much work in this space showing that when a woman treats us badly, it cuts other women at their core. And it's for a few reasons. One, we don't really expect it from other women. You don't expect a sister to take you down. You expect that women are going to be kind and caring and compassionate and nurturing. Like, we have these expectations about how women should be. And look, while a woman shouldn't be nasty to another woman, I think this is an interesting thing about managing expectations. Just because a woman is in a seat of power, does that mean that she should help you? The answer to that is no. Why should she? Why is it based on, unless she's particularly wanting to advance gender equality, and that's something that she's passionate about, and that's her choice, right? That's her choice. However, what we don't expect is the level of takedown or meanness or aggression that often goes along with it. And that is definitely a choice that women have to make, you know. And that's what hurts so much. In fact, all of the stats and the research show us that when a woman hurts another woman at work in some way, and it's different degrees, women actually are more likely to be treated for post-traumatic stress disorder and really take it to heart. And what happens is, as well, and here's the dangerous thing, they don't usually report it until it starts to really affect them physically, till it gets to the point of no return. And it's often because, honestly, women will say to themselves, it's not really happening. This isn't happening. And certain techniques that women use and female bullies use, and more extreme version, put you into the zone where you do start to doubt yourself. And that's what's so difficult and complex about workplace female aggression, because if you've got a bully using gaslighting, which is making up rubbish basically and getting you to doubt that things even happened, it's actually a bit of a mind screw.
Yeah.
And you start to doubt yourself. And women are also naturally socialised to blame themselves for everything. Oh, well, it's actually my fault. It was me. Or maybe there's some truth to it. So we always tend to get the whip out and beat ourselves versus, and here's what the book provides, being able to identify, well, actually, I'm a target. This stuff that's going on, these techniques that are happening, this gaslighting, this white-anting, persistent white-ant, this mobbing, and we can talk about that, this fat shaming.
At work.
Oh, yeah. I have the examples, or one woman who, or one example that I had, and this is a true example, where the male GM of a very reputable oil and gas organisation asked his female office manager to find a new PA for the business, personal assistant, and his technique for sorting through the wheat from the chaff was for her to set up a Hunger Games scenario.
What?
Putting the PAs through a series of grueling tasks where only the strongest would survive.
My gosh.
This is happening. This is recent. I'm not kidding.
I just cannot believe that.
Persistent fat shaming. Persistent fat shaming, where we comment on a woman's appearance, saying, "Oh, how are you going? Is everything all right? Oh, have you been getting stuck into the chocolate? Are you feeling a bit sad? Are you like me? You kind of eat the chocolate when you're getting a bit sad. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, nothing." And this is a technique, okay? The other one is mobbing. This is where the female bully will coerce or recruit others in the organisation to do the bullying for her. So she is smelling like roses.
Yeah.
And she's coerced 2 or 3 other people to target this individual, usually setting up the person almost like an enemy or incompetent or as a loser, somebody you don't want to know, So decreasing their value in the eyes of these people, and then coercing groups of people to go after and literally mob this individual with bullying until they leave or get what they want from this person, until the person is left in a puddle of nothing. And this is how it's done. It gets to the point where the woman who is the target, and this is of bullying, doesn't know whether she's coming or going, doesn't even know it's happening, blames herself, can't make sense of what's going on, which is why female bullying is also, I'm also calling it, talking about the pink elephant. Not the elephant in the room, but the pink elephant is the elephant that we feel like we're hallucinating about. It's a hallucination. We're not really sure that it's happening. And it's also because we don't expect it. So it blindsides us. We're not prepared for it. We don't know what it looks like. We don't have the skills to deal with it. And we end up doubting ourselves, blaming ourselves until we've got nothing left to give, and we end up leaving the organisation, and absolutely destroyed, and then later on going in and getting some psychological help when we've got nothing left to give.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. And I've heard that often. And that PTSD that you talked about, before too, it takes you so long to recover from it. It's so long to recover from it. And you can get triggered quite easily, I think, as well, because, as you say, it's clearly very, very prevalent. So, thinking about what fundamentally needs to shift inside organizations, which seems to be a lot, to move from a sisterhood as a nice idea to a sisterhood that is a real force for change. Like, what needs to happen?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that question. And this is why I wrote the book. It's to really look at how do we go from, how do we move to a place of allyship, and there's a couple of things. One is obviously it starts at the top, right? And we know this. I laugh, and I shouldn't. I think it's a nervous laugh when I hear about people talking about this concept of psychological safety, which no one really knows what that means. As a psychologist, I think, why don't we just say what you mean? A space where we can say what we mean and show up. That's really what it talks about. But it is about leading from the top and making collaboration and allyship non-negotiable. It also means being prepared to address bullying in your organisation, whoever it's from. It's a non-negotiable. We don't allow it to happen. And if we see it, we get them out.
Yeah.
This is not acceptable. See you later. We have a zero tolerance for bullying in our organisations. The other issue you've got, though, Julie, is honestly a lot of leaders, as I mentioned, it's why I wrote the book. Bullying is a term that is bandied around really loosely. Most people don't understand the psychological difference between what bullying is and what other forms of aggression are. And so I think education and training around this is actually what bullying is doesn't fit the criteria, because otherwise you basically give a weapon to anybody to say, she called me a name, she's bullying me. Well, no, it's actually not the same thing.
Yeah.
So I think we need to the punishment has got to fit the crime. But if people are not well versed or educated in the different forms, what they look like and what they mean, then that's the first place. So being able to name it and identify it, and then upskilling people to be able to actually call it out and face it. And that comes from that environment, which actually celebrates people coming forward and saying, hey, this is what's going on. This is what's happening to me. Can you help me to figure out what it is and what I do about it? Because I'm not really sure. So creating those environments where people can come forward, and then providing support to actually change that situation, whether it be moving that person on through zero tolerance, introducing policies and practices that are anti-bullying, having a culture that doesn't allow it, because when a culture is strong, people are going to call it out. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Finding ways to actively lead the change and at a bigger level, organisation-wide, if you understand that the current organisational climates set up women to be pitted against one another, then this leads into the conversation around advancing women at work and representation. What are you doing as leader of that organisation to actively champion women constructively and positively with men to actually create workplaces where everybody's having a good time, bringing their best self to work and thriving, because we need everybody. It's going to take all of us to move the world forward and actually be able to, address these existential threats and challenges that we're facing as a race. So there's a bigger play here, and that's why I wrote the book, because ultimately that's what we're solving for, isn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I totally agree with you. It does start at the top, and there needs to be serious zero tolerance for it. Regardless of who it is, like you said, regardless if it's your star performer, the person who brings in the most revenue, whatever that looks like, they have to go. And very soon you're going to be sending a clear message, because it's the behaviours that speak louder than words. Like having a written policy means nothing. Means nothing to me.
Means nothing. And it's really interesting too, Julie, because psychologically, and this is part of the challenge, right, is there are certain behaviours and certain practices and beliefs that go against women. So this is why we've got to be aware. So, for example, all of the research shows, and I know this anecdotally as well, when a woman outs another woman, they're perceived as a traitor often, or they're regarded more poorly by other women and men in the organisation. So there's this inherent bias towards women outing other women. They're typecast. And this works against us. It's like the whole adage of when a woman asks for a salary increase, they're perceived as aggressive versus ambitious. Yeah. So there's a lot of absolute crap in terms of the current thinking and the biases that exist within organisations and in life in general that are already disadvantaging women and stopping them from actually outing, being mistreated by other women. And we've got to throw that all away.
Yeah.
We've got to get rid of that. That's at a fundamental level. That's some of the stuff that prevents women from actually coming forward. The problem is also that at a deeper level, there are a lot of women actually either, and I know this because I've been speaking to people, either who have had big moments or frequent moments of suicide ideation as a result of this. So this isn't just a little thing, a little feeling sad. And I've also had 2 clients take their own lives as a result of being bullied by other women. The reason why I wrote it in the first place. So it's actually quite severe.
Yes.
And we're not really dealing with it very well at all.
Not at all. Not at all. But the woman to do it is you, Vanessa. Thank goodness that you have written this book. So my final question to you is, for women who are listening today who are either facing being bullied by another female, or being bullied in general, or realizing that they may have been part of the problem, because I'm quite sure some people listening could be thinking, oh my God, I may be guilty of this. What's the first brave step that they need to take?
Yeah, no, thank you. So the first thing I'd say to all of you listening, if this is you have to firstly figure out what is it that I'm actually going through, as I mentioned before. So what is it? Is it a personality clash? Is it really, am I really being bullied? And the bullying is when it's persistent, targeted over time, where you're being gaslighted, white-handed, and it's ongoing, okay? It's always you. It's always you, right? So I think firstly we have to get real with, is this actually happening? And if it is, what does it look like? Because you're not going to be able to confront it if you're not sure, okay? So what I often will say is start to record events, much like a lawyer preparing for a trial. Start to record what's happening. Do it for a couple of months if you can, and just look at the frequency, look at what's actually happening. When you have some data, then what I would want you to do is actually find a sounding board. Talk it out with a trusted advisor, somebody that you know and trust. Could be a mentor external to the organisation. It could be a mentor internal to the organisation. It could be a member of HR if you trust them, because that's often not there. I'm sorry, human resource professionals, but this is what people don't come to you often because they're worried, conflict of interest, right?
Yeah.
So it's got to be someone you trust. I would refrain going to your manager at first instance until you've figured out what it is, because otherwise you do run the risk of being typecast as emotional, reactive, all the usual bullshit. Let's face it. Let's get out the tissue. We don't want that. You need to go in, have figured out what it is, and actually be ready to have the conversation. And you do that with evidence. Okay, you figured out what it is, you've gotten strong, you've got your evidence, and you go in and you talk to it like a lawyer talking to a case. You've got to almost get to a point where you can remove the emotion from it. Otherwise, people aren't going to take you seriously, right? So this is the other thing is it's about looking at the environment you're in. Is my organisation one that's going to support me in this? Is it actually psychologically safe within my organisation? Is this something that's been acted on in the past? Do I trust that my organisation is going to back me, or do I have my doubts about it? If the answer to that after you've gathered your evidence is no, then it's probably not the organisation you want to be part of. I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And what I would encourage you to do once you've done your homework is get out before you've got no energy left to fight.
Yes.
This is what I see women doing. They just stay in there.
Yeah.
Sacrificial lamb, doormats. I'm just going to soldier on because that's what we do. I'm going to keep taking the hits and maybe it'll change. Well, you know what? It won't. So you are best to find a new role, a new opportunity when you still are confident, when you still know your value, before all of your confidence gets shot, because then you're not going to be good to anybody.
Yes.
So that's what I say. Get out before the hurricane hits and be really clever about it.
Yeah.
If you figured out that things aren't going to change, then move on.
Yeah. And that's the choice you have, right? Because as you say, in doing that, you take your power back. Like you put yourself in that position of control and, float your CV, speak to your net, whatever you need to do, it's smartly, like you say, but take your power back and take control. Yeah, 100%. Absolutely.
I have loads of examples. One of the things that really struck me, so to everybody listening, I've interviewed some, and you'll see in the book if you have a chance, even people like Julie Bishop, who was the first foreign minister. So when you read through it, I've got so many extraordinary, high-powered women and, from all walks of life who have gone through bullying and who have gone through these types of scenarios. And the ones that have made it to the other side successfully are the ones who have, once they've figured out what's actually going on, removed the emotionality whilst they still can, put the case together to say, well, what am I actually dealing with? And then what are going to be the strategies? Do I actually have a Guernsey or not? Be really real about it. Step into it. Step into reality. Don't talk it away. And then you can figure out what you want to do with it.
Yeah.
But be prepared to walk if you need to.
Yep.
Because the other complexity, of course, Julie, is, and I didn't mention this, the other level of complexity is once you've figured out, if you have figured out that you are being bullied, is it like a regular bully, or do we have some psychopathic traits? Because that's another, and I talk about that in the book. Is the person also a psychopath or a narcissist?
Jeez, yeah.
Right? So if we've got that other level of complexity, I mean, that's a no-brainer for me. If you're reporting into somebody who's a psychopath, I would just run. I wouldn't even bother trying to sort it out or figure it out. I would just say, you know what? Person's a narcissist. Person's a psychopath. I'm out of here. Because it will never change.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
And if they're in power already, it means they've been put there by the powers that be. So who's going to go, you or them?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Vanessa, this has been so insightful and scary. It's just been such a fabulous conversation. And I really hope that people who are listening really take this seriously and grab a copy of your book and talk about this more within their workplaces and really highlight this as the issue that it actually is. And as you say, talk about that pink elephant. And I'll be sharing links on the show notes in terms of how people can get in contact with you and how they can buy your book. And I really want to thank you for stepping forward and shining the light on this. And as you have behind you, leaving a legacy that you're proud of, which I 100% believe that you're doing in everything that you are doing for other people. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Julie. It was an absolute pleasure. And look, just as a final word, as I said to the attendees at Davos, this doesn't have to be a big thing, but if every single woman that is listening to the show that is in a position of power and man can commit to lifting up one woman per year, it will make a difference. It'll make every woman counts at this point. Let's face it, we couldn't be doing any worse.
Oh, that's right. Exactly.
Honestly, sorry. But, it's just even every person lifting one woman every 12 months will make a difference to where we are, and it'll start to take away the pressure from these environments that are bringing out and drawing out some of these behaviours that we really don't want to see. So,
yes.
Just a big shout out to everybody. Be the change you want to see.
Love it. Thanks, Vanessa.